V'tani Allah, and we learn on this brisa. B'mei devarim amurim kama. When is it speaking about when you've got this halacha, when you've got one beam up and one beam down, that the halacha, the tumah underneath any of the beams makes the whole house tomei. Bizman sheyesh behen tefach, when the beams themselves are tefach wide, ubeineim, and between the bottom beams is peiseach tefach, full stop. And between them is a gap of a tefach. When between them there'll be a gap of a tefach, then that will also tell us that the top beams are also a tefach. However, if between the bottom beams there's no gap of a tefach, then comma tumatach achsmen. If there's tuma underneath one of them, comma tachteha tame, underneath that beam itself is tame, comma beineim al gabehen tahor, between them, between under the gaps and on top of those beams, tahor is tame. Alma ki is be tefach, when it has a tefach, comma amrina chavayt rami, we say chavayt rami. And because we say chavayt rami, then now all the roof is all on the same level, and therefore tumah underneath any of the beams will make tumah under all the beams because it's one flat roof. However, when the gap we said is less than a tefach, then we won't say chavayt rami. This is because the actual beam will also be less than a tefach, and therefore because it's less bei tefach, because it does not have a tefach, loy amrina chavayt rami, we will not pull it down. Shma mina. This is a good raya, a good proof to what Rava said. Now here comes the new Gemara. Are you ready, Rabbi Reuven? Good evening. Let's go. New Gemara. Yosef Rav Kahana. Yeah? New Gemara. Yosef Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana. No, he wants a pencil. See if it works.
It's broken. It's gone.
That's my move. Yosef Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana sat, comma, v'ka'ama laha shmaitza, and he said over this Gemara, comma, Amale Rav Ashi le Rav Kahana. Rav Ashi said to Rav Kahana, he said over this whole Gemara that we just learned, and now Rav Ashi said to Rav Kahana, V'chal heicha deles be tefach, comma, whenever there isn't a tefach, lo yamrina chavayt rami, question mark, we won't say chavayt rami, means we just said over this whole brisa raya that you only say chavayt rami when there's a width of a tefach in the beam. So he asked him, is it really true that you won't say chavayt rami, you won't pull down a beam when it's less than a tefach? And now we're going to bring a brisa. Now the beginning of the brisa is not going to tell us anything, is not referring to this halacha, it's the end of the brisa. We'll see how far we get today. V'hatanya kami, we learned in the brisa. Now there's halacha of a mavos. In the olden days, the way they used to live was they had, let's say, 2 or 3 full bottom on a few houses, chotza, and then all bunch of chatzeros had a little street which was sort of their private street, like similar to Westwood, the actual mavo. V'hatanya means, and we learned in the brisa. And then at the end of that thing, so you've got the way of the mavo is, it's like literally like this. So you've got 1, 2, 3, the walls of all the gardens are all walls around it, so that's all closed off. Now this is open to the main Rosh Hashanah. That's how they were set out, lots of mavos, and this was the main Rosh Hashanah going through the middle of the street. Now this is open, wide, fully open to Rosh Hashanah. Now we have to block it off because we know that you need 4 mechitzas. So you've got 3 mechitzas, you need a 4th for the purpose of carrying in this place, yes. So now you need to carry. So what you do is, you can put a few options. One of the options is called a koira. You put a beam from wall to wall, and when you've got a koira from wall to wall, then that is now considered as if the beam goes down and makes a mechitza. So all you need is one beam. No, not loved. It's really a drabonon dika halacha. It's not a real. It's not. Can we go back? The rice again. The rice, the 3 walls ready make Rosh Hashanah.
But it's also not chavayt rami.
Well, we'll see in a minute why we need chavayt rami at the end of the brisa. Yes.
Omale Rav Ashi Rav Kahana.
Comma.
Right.
V'chal heicha deles be tefach. And whenever the beam doesn't have a tefach, comma.
So v'chol heicha is
wherever.
Right.
Wherever deles be tefach, it doesn't have a tefach, comma. Lo yamrina chavayt rami, question mark. We don't say chavayt rami. V'hatanya, we learn in a brisa. So now we're discussing this beam which is at the end of a street to close off the 4th side of the street. Koira,
so it's a question. It's not.
Yeah, we're about to ask the question where we see that it's not true that you need a tefach.
No, so I'm saying that's like the Omrina Chavayt Rami question mark.
Yeah. V'hatanya, I'll bring you a brisa. Comma. Koira hayotzes mikoisel zeh. So imagine you've got the walls of the mavoi coming up to the Rosh Hashanah like this, and now you've got 2 walls. Koira achas. Koira hayotzes mikoisel zeh ve'inigeis mikoisel zeh. So imagine your beam, instead of going across the whole mavoi, only stops halfway. Doesn't get all the way to the other wall of the mavoi. That's case number one. Koira hayotis mikosel zeh, a koira which is coming out of one wall, comma, ve'eina negas, and it's not touching mikosel zeh, full stop. It's not touching the whole wall, which means the koira is not going across the whole width of the mavli. V'chein, a new case, shtei koiros, you've got here two beams. Achas yotis mikosel zeh, one's coming from one end, and the other one's coming from the other end. Achas yotzes mikosel zeh, comma, one is coming out from one wall. The achas yotzes mikosel zeh, comma, and one is coming out from the other wall. Ve'ein noigoi zur bezu, and the two beams that are coming out from the two walls have a gap in between them. They're not touching each other, comma. Now here comes the halacha. Pachis mishlosh. If this gap, which is either the gap between the two koros or the gap next to the korah from the end of the korah to the wall, is pachis mishlosh, is less than 3 comma. What do we say when it's less than 3? We always say something called lavud. Lavud. Less than 3 tefachim gap, you always say lavud. So over here, pachas mishlosh, if you got less than 3 tefachim, you say lavud, which means that this korah is only going till there. There's less than 3 tefachim gap. We look at it as if it's closed up. Or huadim, when you've got two korahs coming out from the walls, and you've got a gap in between them. When it's less than 3 tefachim, we make as if they're connected,
So
and you've got a kosel.
basically less than 3 tefachim isn't considered a gap.
Exactly. Wherever you go, Sukkah, Shabbos, Tumah, all of them. Use lavud to close things up, connect things. So now, pachis mishlosh, if it's less than 3 tefachim, comma, einoi tzarich lahavi korah acheres, you do not have to bring another korah full stop because it's kosher. However, shlosha, if the width of this gap, either between the two korahs again or from the korah to the wall, is more than 3 tefachim or 3 tefachim and more, comma, then tzarich lahavi korah acheres, full stop, then you do need a new beam, meaning this beam is no good, it's not doing its job because there's a gap. And the halacha of a mavli is that the korah has to go from wall to wall all the way without any gaps. Now, this halacha of 3 being lavud is a very famous machlekes between Tanakama and Reb Shimon Gamliel, and therefore what Reb Shimon Gamliel is going to say now is, according to his own opinion, that he holds lavud is not up to 3 tefachim, it's up to 4 tefachim. Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer, Reb Shimon Gamliel says, pachos mi'arba, comma, if it's less than 4 tefachim, even though it's more than 3, but it's less than 4, ein tzarich lahavi korah acheres, you do not have to bring a new korah, full stop. Why? Because you say lavud. Arba, however, if it's 4 wide or more, comma, then tzarich lahavi korah acheres, full stop, you do have to bring a new korah, which basically means he says the same halacha, just he adds on an extra tefach. He holds lavud is up to 4 tefachim, Tanakama holds it's only up to 3 tefachim, and that's how we go. Now, here comes the halacha of Chavot Rami. Let's just do a few more lines. The halacha of a korah, the width of it, in halacha lemaisa is only a tefach wide. That's how wide a korah has to be. Now, potentially, the way the Gemara says it is that really what you have to have is you have a brick which is a width of 3 tefachim, a length of 3 tefachim, and a width of 1.5 tefachim. Right? So now, if you put it on and it's 1.5 wide, then it's going to overlap a bit. And the Gemara says you put half a tefach that way, half a tefach that way. Well, it's not half a tefach, I mean, it's 1.5. So if you've got a tefach, so you got half split into 2. So it's a half of a half on each side, and you put a bit of cement there, says the Gemara, and you're good to go. Which means you're not actually putting these bricks on. But just the halacha is you have to be able to put bricks on it, because then it looks like a real building place. So we make as if you could put on a stone, which is 1.5 tefachim wide. That's the halacha of a korah.
The stone on where?
On the korah. Means the korah has to be a tefach wide, but the reason why it has to be a tefach wide is because you want to be able to put on it a brick which is 1.5 tefachim wide. Because you want.
Would you put a brick on it?
Well, the reason why we want it to look like that is because it needs to be a hecker, and it has to look like people will see this as a built-in. Yeah, as a built-in, it's built into the mavli.
Right.
Now the only way we'll see it built in is if it looks like it can be there with bricks on top, and it can hold up bricks. So number 2 halachas.
It doesn't need the bricks.
No, it doesn't need.
To be able to have ability. Yeah.
Yeah, in 2 ways. Number 1, in width, it has to be a tefach wide that it can balance them, and number 2, in strength also, it has to be strong enough to be able to hold thing. Right. So now we got the shtei koros hamatimos. You got 2 beams. Each one is not wide enough. Right. The 2 koros, shtei koros, 2 beams hamasimos, which are next to each other. Comma. Matimos are next to each other. They're next to each other. Now, loy bezu kedei lekabarech, v'loy bezu kedei lekabarech. Not this one has enough width to hold the oriach as this brick. V'loy bezu kedei lekabarech. Each one, let's say, is only half a tefach wide. So the brick can't hold on the half a tefach one, and it can't hold on this one either. Comma. So im mekablos oriach l'roch by tefach. If they're close enough that you can now put the brick across them, even though each one doesn't have it, but together you can put a brick across them, yeah? So you imagine there's a gap here, you're going to be able to put a brick like this, then it's kosher. Im mekablis ariach l'rachvei tefach kama. If at the end of the day you can put a brick between the two of them because they're next to each other, you can put a brick across both of them. Kama. Ein tzarich lahavi koira acheres. Full stop. You do not need a new koira. It's kosher. All good. Ve'im lav. However, if you can't put a brick on both of them together, then tzarich lahavi koira acheres, which means if the gap's too big and if you put your brick on it, then this one is half a tefach, it'll fall in, and that one will fall in. You won't be able to hold up the ariach, this brick. Then it's no good. Now, let's just finish off with Reb Shimon Gamliel. A new halach Reb Shimon Gamliel oimer. Don't forget this brick was half a tefach wide by 3 tefachim. So when you put, let's say you got two bricks like this with a space of a tefach in between them. If you put the brick on here, it'll fall off. You put it on here, you fall off. When you put it there, it won't hold bichlal. Right? Now what happens if I put it this way, 3 tefachim length? So I'll put it that way. So Tanakama hold, you can't, because the Uriach always has to be this way. And because it can't hold it this way, no good. Reb Shimon Gamliel says, in Mekablos Uriach la orko shlosh tefachim. However, if it can hold this brick la orko to its length shlosh tefachim, because this Uriach is 1.5 by 3. Yeah, you can put as a footnote, the Uriach is 1.5 tefachim by 3 tefachim. So if it can hold it with its length of its Uriach, because it's 3 tefachim long, ein tzarich lahavi koira acheres. You do not need a new koira kama. Ve'im lav. However, even if lengthways it can't hold it because the gap's too big, then tzarich lahavi koira acheres. Full stop. You have to bring a new koira, and we'll stop over here.
We go over the last bit.
Yeah.